This week, conflict zone is in Skopje, the capital of Macedonia, a country in crisis. Macedonia would like to join the European Union, but it is backsliding in the rule of law and has been wrecked by a wiretapping scandal. Can Macedonia find a way to give its people a future? Nikola Poposki, welcome to Conflict Zone. Your country is in a deep political crisis. Earlier elections were now postponed twice. When are free and democratic elections finally going to happen in your country?
Well, they have happened for more than 16 times since the independence. So
You're
it's not the first
speaking
time
about
that
the crisis of the last month. You know, you had to postpone in April, now you postponed in June. So it's very interesting that the country has to postpone every 4 weeks the elections. When will we have free elections in this country?
the same moment the biggest opposition party would agree that they're happy to participate in the elections. The reason why we have postponed these elections is that we have agreed that we have anticipated elections in April. The Social Democratic Party preferred to have that later. We have arranged for it to happen on 5th of June. Lastly, they have decided not to participate on that. It wouldn't have made sense to have elections without the biggest opposition party. So the same moment they want,
yeah, but this
we will
is a
have
very
them.
interesting information, and from the information point you're right. But let's talk about the motives about all these parties. Your party didn't want it to postpone the elections. It's the result of massive demonstrations and the refusal of all oppositional parties to participate. Everybody was against the elections, only you were not. Why?
Actually, the trigger for not having elections is the fact that the biggest opposition party decided not to participate. Everybody else has said, and I think that this is a fair point, that it doesn't make sense to have elections when your second biggest party in the country and the biggest opposition party does not want to participate. Therefore, I wouldn't say that everybody disagreed with the principle. If you ask all other political parties, they will tell you that they wanted to have June 5th elections, but with everyone on board. It doesn't make sense to have them with
You
them
have
excluded.
demonstrations day per day. Protesters are day per day around the streets. When you enter the ministry, you see a lot of colors. What is the problem in your country?
Demonstrations are not something specific to Macedonia and our part of the world. I would fight for everyone to have the right to demonstrate in this country. And unless we have that right preserved, it doesn't make sense to organize anything which is going in the sense of democracy.
Demonstrators are saying that
Yes.
your party is manipulating the election lists. Demonstrators are saying that your party is not giving a free access to the press, that you are manipulating the press. The oppositional parties are saying it's ridiculous to have elections as long this party is manipulating the possibilities to have a free vote. That's why you have protesters.
If the majority of the population in Macedonia was sharing that view, I wouldn't have been in government, and this party...
We are speaking about the actual times, the last months. The last months, and the EU told you the same. You have to take care about democracy.
We can say also about today. And today still, the people that are demonstrating and expressing these views do not represent the view of the majority of the population. If this was the case, then we
All
wouldn't have
oppositional
finished.
parties and your coalition partners say no to the elections. This is the majority of the country. They represent more than 51%. Why didn't you respect that?
I say no to the elections too. So we all agree that we shouldn't have elections on the 5th of June.
You didn't postpone because you wanted, you postponed because you had to.
That is not accurate. I don't think that... I agree fully with your view that we shouldn't have elections with one single party. But the reason for having elections in June is because opposition has been requesting to happen. However, they share the same view as we have, which public opinion polls are suggesting, and that is that public opinion is not favorable to the opposition. Therefore, what is the interest of an opposition party to hold elections that they're asking for if there is the likelihood of losing them is very high.
Okay, so let's speak about some other things. Your country is being shaken up to one scandal after another. One example is the wiretapping scandal under the former Prime Minister. Who is responsible for this scandal?
I think the only one that can give a judgment on that is a court, according to the rule of law.
So when it is like that, why is the court not working?
Well, there is a process. There are also judgments that have happened. Some of the people that have been involved have been pardoned in the meantime. What has been happening is that the leader of the biggest opposition party came out in public and said, Prime Minister has been wiretapping everyone in this country. And he said, I'm going to show that and I'm going to broadcast. What he has broadcasted during this series of press conferences when he was producing or broadcasting illegally wiretapped materials were conversations of allegedly members of government, including the Prime Minister. So the legitimate question, number one, is how did he get these materials? Number two, if he claims that the Prime Minister was wiretapping, then why is he broadcasting all conversations that are allegedly
we will talk about
including the Prime Minister? Was the Prime Minister wiretapping himself?
That's a possibility, but up to 20,000 people were targeted by your intelligence service, members of parliament, opposition figures, senior civil servants, journalists, judges, all had their conversation recorded illegally for years. That's hardly possible without government knowledge, isn't it?
If this is the case, then the one and only person that has access to that information is the one that was broadcasting, and that is the leader of the opposition.
A lot are broadcasting a lot. Again, how this is possible in a country, 20,000 people without the knowledge of the government, without the government being involved. Again, it was the intelligence service.
Has he produced a proof that there were 20,000 people wiretapped?
The Prime Minister at the time, Nikola Poposki, says the wiretapping scandal created and fabricated and edited. By whom?
The one that was producing that was the leader of the biggest opposition party, Mr. Zoran Zaev.
So you are accusing that the leader of the opposition party had organized the wiretapping in this country?
I don't know. That is the decision of a court.
Who did it? By whom was it done? Who is responsible?
The fact is that the one that was producing allegedly wiretapped materials was the leader of the opposition.
So who was responsible? I mean, this is a crisis of the state when the government is wiretapped. Who was it?
That is why I have answered that he has the keys of giving the information of who gave him the materials. What has been happening in the past period is that there were court cases in which at least 3 current and former officials of the intelligence services have been on trial, some of them sentenced, for the basic reason of being or performing illegal wiretaps. This is what the court decisions have been saying.
Who produced and who was responsible for this wiretapping?
There were clear answers on that.
Who?
Well, the fact was that there was an illegal wiretapping that was happening by some individuals in the intelligence services.
Do you know them?
Well, they have names.
They were convicted?
I think at least one of them. I think at least one of them is convicted, and at least 2 of them are in process in court.
You are right. One person, only one person, was convicted for this massive illegal surveillance operation. A low-level official of the Minister of Interior, and you know what? I don't know if you know, but he has been released. A scapegoat? Do you believe that you can fool the public? One person is convicted for such a state scandal?
Well, it's one more than the number of persons that have been convicted in many other wiretapping scandals around the world that have happened.
One person, and he is released.
True.
Do you want to fool the public?
No, I think
this is democracy.
I think that they should have a fair access to information, and that is the fact that there are at least 3 persons that are subject to judicial proceedings. I think we should preserve the assumption of innocence for the 2 ones that are not convicted.
There are 3, Mr. Minister. I'm a lawyer. There are 3. We are speaking about a wiretapping scandal where the government is included. A lot of people are included. The elite is included. And there were only 3 people organizing this. Who was giving the orders? Who are you covering for? Who is responsible behind these 3 people? I mean, scapegoats, nothing else.
I don't think that neither you nor me are capable of giving sentences to people who have been included in that. The fact is that investigation has shown that people within the intelligence services have been wiretapping government officials, including the Prime Minister himself.
I want to talk about the recorded conversations. One of the tapes, Gordana Jankulovska, former Interior Minister, speaking to her colleague, the Finance Minister, says, quote, "One day we will go to prison for all that."
I don't think that anybody would feel comfortable to show the authenticity of these wiretaps. And I don't think that anybody can comment on things that are clearly taken out of context or edited or drafted or
even it is on
reproduced.
context. A minister of your government is telling another minister of your government, one day we will go to prison for all this. For what?
Frankly,
What was her concern?
Frankly, I haven't got a clue that she said that, and I wouldn't be able to comment on something that I'm not even convinced that she said.
One person was convicted. Two others are still whatever in relationship to the justice. What is proved by these tapes, you say, no, it's not her. Do you say it was not her?
I cannot make an assessment. First of all, I'm not an expert. Second of all, I haven't even heard.
Are you so naive? You don't recognize the voice of your colleagues?
You know what kind of things you can do today with technology?
And who
You
wants
just
to do
need
that?
to. I haven't got a clue. You should ask the ones that are producing.
Okay, but
so
you
maybe
know
Mr.
what?
Zaev would know that.
Okay,
because
but the
he's producing the wire.
But the Finance Minister Zoran Straveski, whose voice is on the same tape, was asked and has never denied their authenticity.
Well, has he confirmed?
Does he?
I don't know.
I will tell you something. If I'm a minister and I'm in such a conversation and I'm asked, politically, certainly I will deny. Certainly, I will tell to the public, you know what, this is really a mess. When a politician is not saying that, why not?
If any of us has been wiretapped for 5 years, during all your phone conversations, you can make someone look like saying whatever you want.
No.
And
If
you
it
can
is
edit
true,
whatever you want.
Dear Mr. Minister, if it's true that she and the government and these two ministers said, one day we will go to prison for all this, I don't know why she said, but she's speaking about her duty.
I think it's a very strong assumption to make on
I'm not
very
making
serious
assumptions.
issues.
I'm quoting what was recorded.
Yeah, what was recorded and what was produced to you by someone who has completely different political agenda. That is the leader of the opposition.
Okay, so
I
the
would
leader
ask
of
him
the-
first,
so-
how did he get these wiretaps?
So why
if
the
he's
leader
so
of
innocent?
why the leader of the opposition is not in a judgment? Convicted?
That's a very good question, and he is also on the list of politicians that have been subject to a presidential pardon.
Okay,
the
so
president has
that's-
pardoned a number
Okay,
of politicians across the political
So
board in this
let's
country.
speak about that. Last month, another prominent members, but the majority of the pardon came from your party. President George Ivanov pardoned 56 people facing criminal investigations, and most of them, I repeat it, are from your party. What a coincidence.
I think that they're across the political board. You also have very eminent politicians from the opposition party.
Let's
but
speak
that is
about
not,
your party.
But that is not the subject of the discussion, who and why. I think
It's
that
the
one
subject.
should...
It's the subject. Let's look who was pardoned.
Okay.
The former Prime Minister, the former Interior Minister, the former Head of Intelligence, all pardoned.
You should know that all of them, the names that you have mentioned, have requested to be excluded from the presidential pardon.
The former Prime Minister had to be pardoned. The former Interior Minister had to be pardoned. The former Head of Intelligence, that means that before they were pardoned, investigations could have happened. Why they didn't say, I don't want to be pardoned?
It is precisely what happened. Actually, the former Prime Minister said to the President, I do not want to be pardoned, I want to be subject to the... Yes, of course,
and
he
you
said
will
that publicly.
But former head of the Macedonian Constitutional Court, Trendal Ivanovski, commented on the pardons. This is the lowest and the most despicable thing that could have happened.
Who has...
The
commented,
former
sir?
head of your Macedonian Constitutional Court.
Okay, I'm not aware of the statement, but
you
in any
have a
case,
Constitutional Court?
we definitely do.
Be sure that the statement is correct?
I take it. I take it as a correct. I will give you my personal opinion. I do not think that presidential pardon was beneficial. If you ask me, I do not think that it should have happened. It would have been better for the country not to have it. However, President of the Republic, according to the Constitution, has right to pardon. His assessment was that the political confrontation in the country was so bitter and the things were so much escalating in the latest period that if he wouldn't intervene, then he wouldn't be held accountable from a historic perspective because of no intervention.
But after he pardoned, the political situation went worse. Your population were fed up about all these things.
I share this assessment. I think it has worsened the political situation.
So the president has to go away. He did a big mistake for the country.
I do not think, because I think that the intention was positive. The consequences were very negative. And sometimes the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
One of your former ambassadors, Asim Zekoli, said after the pardons were announced that it wasn't really surprising. Quote, in a country where it is common knowledge that it is run by one political party, which means your party, and where crime and corruption flourish, this decision was to be expected. I mean, he's talking also about your party. Corruption, crime.
It's fundamentally wrong at the very basis. This country is not run by one party. It has never been run by one party since the independence in 91.
But you are the leading party.
And now we have a very large coalition. And
but
if
you are the leading party.
We are the leading party in the
So
coalition
you are one of
government.
the parties he's talking about. Corruption,
yes.
Crime.
He could have said the same thing for the last 25 years. I guess he can say that for the next 25 years, because there will be always these sort of challenges. I think that the assessment that one should make is how much effort we do to improve this situation. Because these things are happening pretty much everywhere, including in the member states of the European Union.
Okay.
It depends on how we fight it.
Interesting. Only one question. You still want to join the European Union?
Definitely.
Okay, so let's speak about the European Union and what they are believing, what is happening here. A report for the European Commission last year said the situation in Macedonia has been backsliding. Achievements of the last decades, reforms are being undermined by real and potential political interference in the work of the judiciary. The chances of joining the EU are decreasing.
It is accurate. One should look into the reasons and one should ask a legitimate question. This country has been candidate country since 2005 and has a recommendation to start accession negotiations since 2009. That means we are in the 7th year since the European Commission has recommended that we should start and European Parliament has supported. We've been blocked in the Council because member states did not agree with this recommendation from the Commission. And now ask the question, for how long can you hold a country like Macedonia, so much dependent on the European future and its neighborhood, in a limbo where it has no predictability whatsoever on starting accession negotiations on an unjustifiable basis,
there are reasons.
and then keep this?
No, but there are deep reasons. To become a EU member, one must accept freedom of press and freedom of speech. The EU Commission states attempts to limit media reporting on matters of public interest are worrying. Why are you suppressing the media? You can't be a member of the European Union and suppress the media.
I think that there are several nuances that need to be made there. If you say that there is no freedom of speech in this country, I will hardly dispute that. Because you can say pretty much everything, wherever you want.
And the press can write whatever they want. They are
it's a fact.
Free. It's a fact. So when we're speaking of fact, the index of press freedoms published annually by Reporters Without Borders ranks Macedonia 118 in the world, below Nigeria or Qatar. Aren't you ashamed?
It says a lot also about the methodology of grading countries. It's based on experts' assessments, very often has a political bias, and I strongly disagree with the assessment that Macedonia has a lower freedom of speech rating than some of the countries that you've quoted, and probably even more that are above us. It is a political assessment. It is a deficiency that we definitely have in the area of media polarization and people taking sides. So this is something that we need to tackle seriously, and it is the responsibility of the government.
They are not the only one. Peter van Houten, retired EU mediator, said to Deutsche Welle in March, I'm shocked by the current situation, the atmosphere of fear, suppression of freedom. That's what you call democracy?
Well, first of all, it's good also to take a distance from some of the sources because he used to be a mediator that is no longer a mediator because of taking political sides in this battle, which is one of the things that one should not do if he wants to be an honest broker.
But with his experience, he decided to make a statement. So
Yes.
All the quotes from anybody, everybody, whatever, are not correct, are not representing the truth. Can it be that they are representing the truth, but you don't want to admit that it is like that?
I'm taking at the face value what you're saying. So if you tell me that there is a major fear in our society on saying or publishing things, how does it happen in this country that you have hundreds of statements and positions that are extremely critical to the government? So one should pick a thesis. Either we have complete suppression of freedom of speech and then you will only hear positive things about us, which is not accurate.
We were not talking about complete. A little bit in a democracy is even too much.
Okay, well...
Freedom is not a little bit being pregnant. There is freedom of speech, there is freedom of press, or there is not.
I agree, and I would buy your argument. However, we should go in the real world and check what is the Macedonia's position compared to peers in the region and to member states of the European Union. So if you ask me that freedom of speech in Germany and Sweden is more expressive and easier to define than it is in the Balkans, I buy that argument. If you're telling me that Macedonia is worse off than some of the peers in the region, not some, but all of them, including those that are in the European Union, that's not true.
Do we agree both that Macedonia has to improve these things?
Fully agree.
Okay, that's
I
good.
buy
So
that.
you
We
buy
need to agree.
We need to agree, and we agree that we agree. But let's talk about the tens of
and
thousands.
we will improve. I'm pretty sure about it because there are a lot of people that are convinced of that.
I'm very interested on that. But let's talk about the tens of thousands of refugees camped on the fair side of your border to Greece. On March 11th this year, you were quoted in the Jerusalem Post, "We are willing to give them humane treatment and safe transit." Are you treating the refugees, these people, humanely?
Every single refugee that has reached Macedonian territory has been treated humanely and safely. And this will continue to happen.
And the rest on the borders. 2 weeks earlier, 2 weeks before you told that to the world, on February 29th of this year, Macedonian police fired tear gas and stun grenades at refugees. You call that humane?
One should also say what happened at that day. We had literally an invasion of several hundreds of young male individuals that used violence to cross illegally a state border. Would Germany tolerate that? I don't think so.
They tolerated that.
Not,
sure.
not the violence.
There was never
Not the
on
violence.
the German borders rubber bullets. There were never tear gas. And because you are saying adults, Achilles Tsemos of Médecins Sans Frontières said that there were also children. Forces used rubber bullets against children. That's humane treatment?
This is something that one needs to confirm, because from the reporting that we have received, there were no rubber bullets used at that border incident. There was tear gas, and there were definitely police forces that were preventing from massive illegal crossings. The major problem is that Austria would never allow for such a thing to happen, which has happened to us from a Greek territory, because you had 20,000 of migrants stuck in tents, left at the borderline and incited to use violence to cross the border.
But does this legitimate to use chemicals, rubber bullets, stand grenades?
It is very illegitimate to attack Macedonia for doing what is requested by the European Union. If you ask about Macedonian political decision making, for us the cheapest and the most efficient thing would be simply to open up borders, put big panels, make indication north, and then send people where they want to be. They want to be in Sweden, in Netherlands, in Germany.
You decided to take another way. Can you defend this decision with chemicals?
We decided to do what we want to do because we want to join the European Union and we want to be part of a European answer. And it helps Greece, it helps Germany, it helps all the countries on the transit route, because all the negative things that you're mentioning are happening on Macedonian territory. And we are the only border where refugees and migrants are leaving the European Union in order to join a country that is not part of the European Union. Why would we fight the battle of others
Can't you
unless
say,
we wanted to
can't you
convince them
say-
that we are
can't
part
you
of the
say
European
it was
family.
a mistake, I apologize. Children never.
I don't think that anybody should be even thinking about it. But what has happened is not what you have described. Children have been never subject to violence. And what has happened literally is young male individuals using force to cross illegally the border. Macedonian police could have spent the weekend on lakeside and just observed migrants who will reach Munich sooner. We decided that this is not an option because European Council said that we need to resettle people. Solution to that is that we take these people in tents from the border and we put them in the reception centers for which European Union has paid a member
Nikola
state.
Poposki, thank you very much for joining Conflict Zone.
Thank you very much for the invitation.